Everywhere you go, it's just not England anymore. There's too many immigrants. That's the simple fact. And our people are being demographically replaced. This is our land, not theirs.
He was born and bred here. So were his parents. So were his grandparents. Does he not belong here?
No, it's not personal. It's necessary. If there's no English, there's no England. And at the moment, the direction we're going, there will be no England. Culture is downstream from ethnicity and race. Our culture comes from our people. Would we still have the same culture if everyone in Britain is mixed race? Yeah, your politics is a problem to me. 1 or 2 Africans in your village is more problematic than 1 or 2 Polish people. If it's white, it's all right. If it's brown...
Depends on the people. Like if you have like the Heimbach crew shooting up drugs versus like the highest IQ blacks, then I'd probably pick the highest IQ blacks if there's just a couple one of them. Seems like really race absolutist, the guy.
Yeah, I would say that, because if you look on Steve's Twitter page, it's just constantly saying black and white and all these other things about like this, like black shooting up things and all these other things, all these claims he's made on Twitter, I think. So yeah, I would say that he's very race absolutist.
Yeah, that's hard. That's a very hard sell on the political, I guess, compass today, or the Overton window today.
Head kicked in for any of your views. What are your views on Adolf Hitler? So you've got 3 daughters.
Yep.
If one of them fell in love with a black man, what would you do? Where no previous experience is necessary.
And in change, we also have Andrew Tate giving premium courses on how to buy a real N-word Tate coin.
All the steps to building your own successful business.
Yeah, cars and planes.
Steve.
Beautiful woman.
So for the benefit of the audience, you've agreed to come on the show after we had an exchange of words on X. You actually insulted me, but I let it go. But I did say you sound like an interesting guest. The door's open. You've accepted that invitation. And the agreement is you're an open book. You said to me that nothing is off limits. I can ask you any question I like. And in return, I'm not going to sit here and make this a heated debate so that you get your say, but I can ask anything I like. And I think this would be better for the audience. And we haven't got to sit here and thrash out our views and opinions. But we may as well get the ball rolling, start as we mean to go on. If my mum was black, what would you do to her?
In terms of what do you mean by what would I do to her?
Would she be welcome in the UK, or would she not be welcome in the UK if you was the leader of a political party that was in power?
If I had my way, no, she wouldn't be. She would be deported. That's my line. Our people should come first. And the mixed race question, although it is a very controversial subject, it is a problem that needs to be addressed. At the moment, it's around 3% of the population, but that grows to 5%.
Yeah, he's a mulatto.
It goes to 10%, and it is a problem that needs to be addressed. Nobody wants their nation to be like Brazil.
Okay, so we're going to unpack all that sort of stuff for...
Does he join like a new party? Did he leave Homeland?
Yeah, basically, so what happened afterwards, I think he either went back to PA or Patriotic Alternative. And I think the original reason why he left was that he thought that Homeland wasn't radical enough, even though I think it was radical enough in terms of its messaging. But then him and Zuma retardedly decided that they wanted to sign a page outside of the party. I've covered this in one of my videos. What ended up happening was that, Zuma tried to get people outside of, Zuma historian, tried to get people outside of the party to sign this letter saying that, they wanted the chairman, Kenny Smith, to resign. And it was just like, it was a pathetic attempt because he got more people outside of the party than in to actually sign it. And I'm not sure if Steve was involved in that. I don't necessarily think he was. Again, I can't prove that, but I do think that they started to turn on. Someone asked him in an interview, would you deport someone's Portuguese wife if they were married to a British? And he said no. And that's kind of where they draw the line, because I think Zuma and Steve are nordicists. Basically, they don't think England and Northwest Europe's white.
Yeah, well, the Baltics apparently too, and Poland, maybe. Well, Zuma's okay with Latvians because Latvian wife.
Yeah, his wife's Latvian.
On down the line. But I just wanted to set the tone of where we're heading. So let's go back. Define, because I get accused of being far right. So the left don't like me because they think I'm far right. And I know that your mob don't like me because I'm not right enough. So people can familiarise themselves with these terms. They may not know the actual definition of them. So you're an ethno-nationalist.
Yeah, that's correct. I'd call myself an ethno-nationalist.
Okay, so define, and we'll abbreviate that to FNAT to make it easier for me to keep it smooth.
Yeah, that's fine.
Define what an ethnat is for me.
So an ethno-nationalist is someone that puts our ethnicity first. That means you understand which ethnicity is, such as the English are an ethnic group, the Scottish are an ethnic group, the Welsh, and so forth. And my position is that ethnicity belongs to this country. We are the founders, we are the keepers of this country, and that ethnicity should be protected and secured our future. That's what I see myself as an ethno-nationalist. In reality, an ethno-nationalist is actually just a nationalist, but they've added the civic term because they're more liberals that just dislike Islam. And then you have the ethnat, which they've now used, which is ultimately a nationalist, but they've used the ethno-nationalist line because it's more focused on ethnicity, but that is the basis line of a true nationalist anyway.
So are you a racist?
Some people would call me a racist. I don't shy away from the term. I don't use the term myself, but if you want to call me a racist, I'm not going to sit here and go, oh my God, you've called me a racist. I know what I am. I'm a nationalist. I put my people first. If that's classified as a racist in the modern era, then so be it.
I know that's kind of a weak question because the word's been watered down, but from your point of view, if you was to look yourself, if Steve Laws was to look himself in the mirror, would you define yourself as a racist if you was being brutally honest?
It depends on the context of it. If you're saying, is the argument of, are you a racist and you hate other races? Then it wouldn't be, no, that would be a no. So I don't hate all other races. I just believe that we have our own homeland and those people should not be in our land. That makes me a racist by definition, then so be it. But it's not something I would welcome and introduce myself and go, hi Liam, I'm Steve the racist. That's not something I would use.
Okay, so two people that come into my mind before anybody else, and I do apologise if they're thinking, why the fuck are you using me as an example? I've got a black mate from Oxford called Footlong. We call him Footlong because he's been blessed in that department. And I've got Xavier, the life coach, who's a prominent black figure, life coach on the internet. I love them both dearly. So do you think you're more superior to those black guys because of your skin pigmentation?
No. So this is something that's always thrown at us and is always misconstrued and mixed up. We don't see ourselves as above these people. We just want to protect our own people and our own.
Well, I would like to chime in. It's this classic shitlib line of skin cooler. Like if you look at Xi Jinping, his skin pigmentation doesn't differ that much from like Eastern European or English person. Like race is more than skin cooler, or the differences between the ethnic groups is more than skin cooler. You have like skull shape to a certain extent, facial features, phrenology.
Yeah, there's
metabolism.
Like, and then there's obviously human.
Yeah, well, basically, for the audience, just look up like an albino sub-Saharan African, albino African, and like tell me, do they look like a Swedish person? Like obviously, you see it from their face that their ethnogenesis is in sub-Saharan Africa. It's kind of an interesting normie line. I think it's been kind of drilled in by, I would say, Martin Luther King and people like.
Yeah, people use
that is like the color of the skin.
Well, I think there was a point that Frank Zanu, I think I might have mentioned him in one of my videos, where basically he said that he's gone from people use that line of the whole you just care about someone's skin color, which isn't the case. When you look at, for example, when Frank Zanu was talking about you're not being judged by you're judged by the content of your character, not your race, but now you're being judged by the content based off your race. So, for example, what happened during the 2020 Black Lives Matter riots, and a lot of people, I think, as well, when they saw all that, the ridiculousness of the riots that went on for 9 months and cost $2 billion property damage in America, for example, I do think that it did wake up a lot of people on the whole, the ridiculousness of it, and why the reason why they were all like quote unquote chimping out was because of George Floyd, who was like a career criminal who robbed a pregnant woman and was he was a heavy drug user on fentanyl. So I would say the whole people thinking that they murdered George Floyd because of his skin color, when that wasn't the case, when he was a career criminal, as I said before, and as well, he wasn't exactly a saint. So yeah, this comes up.
Well, that specific instance was the cops were like really angry and really, really bad mood, and it was, in my opinion, it was like excessive amount of force, because the dude was like high, he was like really weak, he was really like limpy.
Yeah,
and like that specific position is like really shitty.
Shervin, I do think, did cause an accident. Well, it was like unavoidable.
He had like personal. I think he had like personal experience with George, like bad experience.
Yeah, something like that.
You get a local community, so it's like obviously it's like a really dumb move. I don't condone that, but like my point would be that if you have like a mass immigration wave from certain areas that you could either accept or reject, like judging by statistics of a race is kind of logical in that sense, especially if you don't have the time to screen these people. Like it kind of makes sense for like an individual who's like super exemplary. Yeah, you can make the argument that you should like check their credentials. If it's some like really high IQ scientist from Nigeria, whatever, no crime history, then yeah, he's not going to cause a lot of problem. But if you have like a bunch of workers migrating from like a really violent area of Sudan whose IQs have been tested as really low, or who have like previous drug problems and convictions, then yeah, it makes sense to judge by the group or like the government immigration policy.
Called me a racist. I know what I am. I'm a nationalist. I put my people first. If that's classified as a racist in the model above these people, we just want to protect misconstrued and mixed up. We don't see ourselves as above these people. We just want to protect our own people and our own ethnicity and our own race. So I'm a white man, I'm an English man, and to me, those are my people, and that's where I draw the line. I don't see myself superior to any other race, but that doesn't mean that they belong in our homeland or they should be allowed to live here when they was brought over on false pretenses by establishment figures that do not care about our people. They was only bringing them over as cheap labor or for whatever other reason. And that's where I draw my line. So people can use the argument of, but they're black and they work hard and so forth. But to me, that means nothing. It's irrelevant how much money you bring to the country. It's irrelevant what you've done whilst you're here. You are not one of us. And our people are being demographically replaced. So under no circumstances is that okay.
So before I go to your upbringing, I mean, we've got so much to cover, but I'm going to try and keep it short and punchy without the debate and the challenge.
Yeah, no, you're cool.
Because it's pointless if we clash. No one's going to get to know why you've...
Yeah, that was actually a good response. Like, it's an improvement from the Jeff Barry era politics where like, we are the Ku Klux Klan, we hate N-words, we hate F-words, and we hate S-words just because they breathe. Like, that's good.
Yeah.
1990s were crazy. Yeah, that's an improvement.
You know, where you are in life, if I keep interrupting and saying, I don't agree with that, and how about this? So do you think, for example, the Windrush era was a success?
No. The Windrush era were the first illegal immigrants that came into the country. They was never invited. They should never have been allowed in. And the fact that they've been celebrated and put on some pedestal as if they're the greatest generation is absolutely ridiculous. They came up.
Does the Windrush era refer to the Caribbean immigrants after World War II?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the argument by the government was that war killed many people. We need people to replace them so we can rebuild faster. We need manpower.
What I wanted to say on that point is what Steve's trying to say. So basically, after World War II, that people said that, oh, well, the government were importing people from all over, etc. Even somewhere like the Caribbean. All these black people came off these boats and sort of went and rebuilt Britain. That is the sort of like the official narrative for the UK. So the Windrush generation were the first, like essentially the first black people in the UK. But the problem is that what people don't realise is that there were these, the Windrush, the boats, they were actually, when they were going past, I think they were on their way to Australia somewhere. And basically, as they were passing to this one place, what ended up happening was, I think what was either the ticket master or the boat company decided that, oh, well, we'll just start selling these tickets to people. For some reason, I can't remember the reasons why, but basically what would end up happening was they would just basically get these tickets and then all of a sudden just end up in the UK. And then what ended up happening after that was that the government were like, well, hang on a minute, why have you come on here all of a sudden from a boat when they've got no... Because what ended up happening also was that they were kind of, debating whether or not they should be, like, deported. But obviously, you could make the argument that the government needed people to rebuild afterwards. I think even after the Windrush generation, as I covered in one of my videos, is that a lot of those people, I don't think were either even employed, at least even after like 10 or 20 years after World War II, they had a high rate of unemployment, if I remember from the census going back around that time era. I think they had quite low employment as well, despite being a minority. Same with the Pakistan.
Yeah, that's something that can be argued with stats. Actually, I can okay, were they like unofficially employed as construction workers, how many of them were employed, etc., etc. That's something that Ryan Falk would love to like debunk or attack, because he did it with like the French colorblind policy, so-called, in the French immigration, and like what the actual cost was. He like dug up the cost and calculated it really spurgily.
I have covered the reason why they came off, but obviously to do with the employment and all these other things. I mean, I could have probably made better points then in that video, but yeah, we'll probably cover that another time. But obviously,
I mean, if you want a topic that's been covered by Falk and that's like relevant to the UK, it was kind of two things. There's like his response to Coach Red Pill, and second was the UK Gaslight was a video that he made for like later reference.
As illegal immigrants, they was not invited, but their offspring, the second, the third, the fourth generations, they're the ones running through London in the stab gangs and causing all of the violence in the streets and so forth. These people do not belong in the country, and they are not welcome. They may be welcomed by the establishment, but the average person in the street that I've spoken to would happily deport them.
So when you say they're not welcome, because I know plenty of people that do welcome them, that have assimilated with them, that drink and break bread and spend Christmas Day with them. I say them, people of colour, me being one of them. I've got lots and lots of different coloured friends. I'm from Crawley, which is a London overspill, so it's multicultural. Not that I think multiculturalism works, because there has to be a top tier.
That is something that's really hard to break usually. If a normie has had like a lot of positive experiences with like people of color and like other racial groups, then like it's really hard to convince them, because at least like a spurg like me, because like my experience with like Africans and sub-Saharans was like high IQ students and like really top echelons that had like come to Estonia. But because I'm a spurg, I could be convinced by statistics to be skeptical of mass immigration. But because he's probably like a normie who doesn't like make his beliefs based on stats, it would be really hard to convince them.
Blacks can even be normies, and even they might have liberal attitudes, like, they don't see race or whatever. These people can forget that sometimes. And obviously, yeah, they have like a very strong in-group preference, but and that can also be an effect societal.
Well, yeah, I would say yes. I don't know. The theory is that blacks are kind of more instinctual because of like lower IQ, whatever, that they're like more grok-brained.
Yeah,
and harder to turn into like shit libs or like they're harder to turn into midwits. They don't necessarily understand like the stats of race, but they kind of have this like biological in-group preference, like done with the baby experiments, where they showed, I guess, babies preferring people of their own race. I don't know if the black babies preferred black people with a stronger bias than white babies or Asian babies. Their own like white and Asian
baby studies, and one of them was that apparently later in life, a lot later in development, it takes a while for them to actually have a concept. I think other people. I think it takes a while for them to develop that longer.
My specific question was here that do black babies have a stronger in-group bias than whites and Asians? That was my question.
Yeah, like I said, within that study that I did read, apparently, like even like they don't recognize other people, but it takes a while for them to recognize them themselves. So
yeah, so that would make the compiling of that data harder, because they don't, I guess, recognize other people.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll see. We'll do the more digging, maybe.
Here culture, which is the British culture. So that's sort of me kind of trying to meet you somewhere in the middle there, because I know it's not black and white, no pun intended. But we'll come to all of that. Let's go back to your upbringing, where you're from, what moulded you, school, any altercations, any trouble into teenagehood. I want to find out why you've got these real, we could call them radical views, couldn't we?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. That's fine. Yeah, so I grew up in Folkestone, normal household, dad, mum, few brothers and sisters. Old man used to race pigeons, normal upbringing, normal school. So I went to primary school. Everyone in my primary school was pretty much English. There was like the odd Slovak, but other than that, everyone was pretty much English. Then I went to secondary school. That's where I first sort of met like a Pakistani and an Indian. But other than that, very normal upbringing. Had kids quite early, my first child at 19. Now got 3 children, I'm 34. So relatively normal upbringing. nothing sort of out of the ordinary from any other background, really. It's just I see what was happening in front of me in the country and I couldn't stay silent anymore.
Was you ever bullied at school?
No, I was a bit of a shit at school, to be honest with you. I won't go into details, but yeah, I was a little shit when I was younger.
We want details on this podcast, Steve. Give us the details.
Typical council estate kid, basically, causing shit on the estate, smoking whilst I was younger, getting arrested now and then, like for nothing major, just sort of like pissing about as a kid on the estate or something, like just your average normal council estate kid, basically.
Because I'll be honest, I did wonder, maybe when you was younger at school, you were bullied by a black man or a...
Well, the council estates are some like education facility grounds in the UK.
And basically, what a council estate is that it's basically, I won't say IQ deficit, maybe they're probably the lower IQ version of whites, but I would say that they're not exactly the best quality people. They're like very lower to mid class, I would say, where they kind of like live in sort of these rabbit hutches. So basically, the councils in the UK would basically build these like buildings and then give these people houses, and people would call them like rabbit hutches.
Oh, okay. So like basically like houses for people who are kind of poor, like social housing.
People, we'll just say.
Okay, yeah.
That's what a council estate
brown
is.
man or a yellow man, and this is why you formed your opinion. So I had to ask.
No, ask away. But the thing is, there was no foreigners in my school, so it was all just white kids, other than like maybe like a handful of foreigners in my secondary school, and that they were Gurkhas, like that lived on the army base, and then there'd be like the odd Pakistani, and there was 2 black kids, I think. So that out of a school of like 1,500 people, there was not many at all. We didn't even really see them until college properly.
And did you exclude them 2 black kids, or did you become friendly with them?
I just didn't speak to them. They was just not in my circle. Like, it wasn't like, oh my God, they're black, we can't speak with them. It was just, they're just other. It wasn't because they were black or anything. It was because they were foreign. It was just, no one could have anything in common with them. Like, we were all talking about what was on TV last night, the football clubs in our local area and so forth. And there's these foreigners that are just completely other. And that's how we'd always seen them.
And was there ever a light bulb, or do you remember the light bulb moment where you thought to yourself, that's happened, I'm racist?
No, not really. So obviously I started filming the boats and so forth.
I just want to make a point on what Steve's talking about. So in my primary school, obviously I've had a similar experience with, obviously to do with, having foreigners within your school, like maybe an occasional Chinese, like there was this one Chinese kid in my school, and then there was like a kid. So when I was a lot younger, like that was only the diversity that I had. And one of the kids I was actually like really good friends with, I think. And basically, people would say that, oh, like my racial views now, it's like, oh, well, someone, like he's trying to basically push onto him, like, oh, was he ever bullied by a black person at school? Which obviously, like, people say, oh, he's just been bullied as a kid, which, like with Steve and me isn't the case, because, you can even be friends with them, and, you can have non-white friends. I think that would be the case, but obviously, his racial views, I think would have been just moulded, obviously, just through seeing demographics rather than just Steve just having an in-group preference, which obviously has been folded, tenfold in now, I would say.
Because obviously I lived in the area, so I was one of the first to expose the migrant invasion and so
what
forth.
year did you start doing that?
About 2019. So going back a while, it's like a whole thing now. Everyone does it now, so it's quite refreshing to see. But back when I used to do it, this is back before like even Farage was talking about it and so forth. And so then I sort of carried on doing that. I sort of started doing that just to prove to my friend that it was happening. He didn't believe that it was getting loaded onto coaches and then taken to a hotel and then so forth. So I went, filmed that, showed that, put it onto Twitter, and I had like 200 followers or something at the time, and it got like millions of views. There was like Piers Morgan retweeting it and stuff. So I was like, okay, people don't know about this. So then I just sort of carried on. And then before you know it, I'm 2 years down the line, still exposing this, going to the camps and so forth. And then I sort of sat back one day and I just see everyone complaining about illegal immigration, barely mentioning legal immigration. And this was the time when it was over 1 million that had came over in a year. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, I feel like I'm partly responsible for encouraging everyone to just focus on illegal immigration now because I'm the big influential illegal immigration guy. So I sat back and I was like, right, I'm not doing this no more. It sort of timed around the time that the docks was all closed off and no one could actually go down and film because the border force put restrictions in. So by that point, I was just like, I need to move away from the illegal immigration thing, because the greater problem is legal immigration, and everyone's distracted by a few thousand boats when millions are coming in through the airport.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. That migration on the whole is completely out of control. And it is very easy to distract us with the boats. It's like, well, look at this hand while this hand does that. And this hand is doing far more damage if you really study that hand properly. Because, we need to get our own shit in order. We've got enough of our own scumbags. I mean, do you find that within your movement you've got more than your fair share of scumbags, of FNATs, for example?
So there have been the odd person that I wouldn't associate with and so forth. I'm not going to use names and use an opportunity to shit on people, but there are a couple of people that I wouldn't associate with in what you call my movement, just like there are people in your movement that I wouldn't associate with for other reasons. But I wouldn't say it's a common thing. Most of the people that I've met through politics, especially in my position, just care about their country, their fathers, their workers. They just want to get on with their life, but they've been forced to have to do this because they're being demographically replaced in their homelands. There's nothing they can do about it other than speak out and be active.
Yeah, see, I think the West on the whole is culturally superior. But that's my take. I think our culture is strong and should be amplified and should be respected more than any other culture. Certainly if you're going to come and live amongst us. But I have a different take on it racially. I don't think racially we are superior. The colour of someone's skin, for me, I'm colourblind. Do you think that we're racially superior as a country?
I would say racially superior. I'd say we're superior as a country. If you look at the history of the British people and what we've achieved and what we've done over the world, our people are some of the greatest people that have ever lived on this planet.
If Fjodor, you want to give chime in on the British Empire's achievements that you covered in one of the videos, just to emphasise.
I mean, what made it great was the Navy, the innovativeness, first of all, in the Navy. I guess, in my opinion, where Britain kind of jumped off is the Francis Drake era, where they made ship innovations so that the cannon sizes were kind of standardized. And the main form of ship combat would be to shoot from afar rather than like get into a boarding action. That way they could like troll and just harass and outclass the Spanish. And from that naval superiority, they started to expand an empire. Obviously, they had setbacks. Like the English Armada also failed against Spain after the Spanish Armada failed, but the naval superiority allowed them to get like a big empire. They were one of the first to industrialize. They kind of integrated Scots and Welsh and Irish to different degrees, and like Adam Smith, I guess, came from Scotland. So they were not like super like discriminatory against all of their ethnic groups, and they used the expertise of other groups to innovate, like in economics and in industry. They were one of the first to industrialize and build like a railway. And from that advantage, they had like naval plus industrial advantage. And it kind of lasted until like before World War I, where Germany started catching up to them in industry. And after that, they got kind of battered by debt. And then like World War II, the US passed them in Navy, and that's when they stopped being number one. So yeah, I guess my two key takeaways is naval innovations are important, and industrial innovations are important. And to be fair, like their governance style was pretty civil compared to, let's say, the Belgians in the Congo, or the Chinese in the Jungar areas. Like for all the bloodily put down uprisings, they were pretty tolerant rulers, I would say. They weren't like Wignats in the sense of, we need to crush every minority.
Let's just look at the achievements we've done. But that's not to say we're superior in terms of race, but the British people have been more superior than the Polish. Still,
the rights, like the Magna Carta and stuff, so they were a pretty good legalistic country. With basically, if you were law abiding to like reasonable laws, then you could expect to be rewarded, and therefore you're incentivized to create wealth and be productive. Yeah, so I guess decent legal system and rights, naval innovation, and industrial innovation.
white. We're both white. So it's not a case of a racial hierarchy. This is where I'm back down to the ethnicity of our people. This is what I focus on. And to sort of portray that as a racial hierarchy is kind of, it's not doing justice to our position, if that makes sense, because we're not sitting here saying we're better than everyone. We're saying we deserve to exist. This is our homeland and we have the right to exist here. This is our land, not theirs. But when it comes back to the cultural thing, culture is downstream from ethnicity and race. So our culture comes from our people. If our people do not exist, that culture that you celebrate and say is the greatest would no longer exist. Would we still have the same culture if everyone in Britain is mixed race? We wouldn't.
Well, I've met and know, I'm trying to count hundreds over I'm 45 years of age. So, I've come across hundreds of people. I've got hundreds of friends. I run a security firm. So I've worked the door with some solid black lads, and we all think the same, and we all perceive the country as the same, and they're more Christian than me. I'm not religious at all, but in fact, if anything, some of my black mates have got better morals than me. So that's one thing I can disagree with through my own personal experience, for example. But you've been the leader of a few political parties.
Not so much the leader, but I have been like a leading face.
You've been a prominent figure.
Yeah.
So without getting into the minutiae of all of that, I want to talk to you about remigration, because that's one of your policies that you really lean into. So what is the actual meaning of remigration? And let's go into just how far you'd be prepared to go.
So remigration is ultimately the process of returning immigrants back to their ancestral homelands. That's the basics of it. It's essentially, you can call it mass deportations, you can call it what you like, but essentially the process is removing immigrants and returning them back to the nation they belong to. That's remigration. How far I would go.
How many generations back do you go?
I don't think it's a case of counting generations. I think it's a case of if they don't belong here, they should go. I don't think we should go, all right, so we're going to cut off at third generation, fourth generation's fine, because that's just nonsense. Because some of the rape gangs, like if you look at the Pakistani rape gangs, these are third, fourth generation people in our country that many in the civic nationalist circles, the conservative circles, whatever you want to call it, would say these people are British. They were born here. Their parents were born here. Their grandparents were born here. They know no other land. But they're still raping little children. They're still living in their own little bubbles. They're still amongst their own people because they're not us and they never will be us. You could have 20 generations down the line. There would still be a clear divide between them and us. And this is the problem. So if the majority of the country starts flooding in, like we're seeing now, for instance, and we're already around 75% of the population, when that keeps declining, there's going to be more and more problems. There's going to be more third and fourth and fifth generation immigrants that could be problematic. Some of them, sure, they could be sound. They could have a job. They could live a normal life. Like you said, you've probably got friends with them and so forth. I haven't myself personally, but others have. Ultimately, do they belong here? No. Have they got somewhere else to go? Yes. Why are they here? There's no reason for them to be here. My position is total remigration. And until our people are secure and our future is secure and there is no risk of our people being demographically replaced in our own homelands, my position will always be total remigration. Everyone has to go.
But if my Ghanaian mate Lawrence, for example, he was born and bred here, so were his parents, so were his grandparents. By Lawrence's generation now, my Ghanaian friend, isn't this where he belongs now? Because it's all he knows, it's all he's ever breathed, it's what he loves, and it's what he abides by, the British Christian culture of the nation. Does he not belong here?
No. He does not belong here. It doesn't matter how long you've been here or the time scale is irrelevant. This is not your land. These are not your people. Sure, he's a victim of immigration. It's not his fault that he's been put in this situation. I can understand that and I can sympathise to some extent, but the point still remains the same. This is not their land. They're not our people. They're not our problem, and they shouldn't be here. He's only taking part in the demographic replacement of our people. And for you to use the example of he's gone back 3 generations or so forth, I think it was 3 generations you just said.
Just as an example.
Just an example.
Yeah, that's also a pretty hard sell because, he's probably been stripped of the land of his ethnogenesis because his ancestors moved in the UK. So it would be like really hard to force him to integrate into Ghanaian culture or like some Ghanaian tribe.
Yeah, it's kind of the same case.
I mean,
I
guess
it would be. Sorry, let me just finish. It would be the same case of like, even if I did, would the country that they came from would accept them back? Like, if they're the government, like, would the government go, oh yeah, we'll take this person back who's completely alien to the ethnic ethnic culture.
I mean, to be fair, like Ghanaians do speak English. I think Ghana.
Yeah, Ghana's.
I don't think it would be that hard as compared to, like, let's say I was adopted at birth by some Chinese family and I only spoke Chinese, and it would be like really hard for me to like reintegrate back into into the culture of my ethnogenesis, because the alphabet is different, the language is super different, the culture is really different. And like, I guess, like, would he bite the bullet and say, look, if the government doesn't accept him, we'll just kick him into the ocean, or like take him somewhere random? Well, it's just a step away from just like Heinrich Himmler's steam chamber.
Yeah,
and that is like a really.
There was another case of like, oh well, why don't you use foreign aids to bribe countries? That's a point Pete North made.
I guess you and I think a lot, like the hardcore Wignats would say that it's capitulation. They should accept them either way. Like we're being like cucks by by giving them money. They should accept them like for free. We should like threaten them with war. We should not give them anything that's like treason and cuckoldry and capitulation. To be fair, yeah, most would be okay with that sort of thing, where they pay the governments to take them back.
Point is that he should be deported, and those 3 generations of families have came over. They've taken opportunities from British people. They've taken homes that could go to a British people. They've taken jobs that could go to British people. They've taken school places that could go to British kids. They're taking advantage, whether they mean to or not. That this is the issue. So our people still have to provide for these people. They still have to look after these people, even if they're working.
So that's the line. So the Poles that I grew up with, love and adore, the Turks, I mean, where I'm from, well, where I moved to from where I'm from, massive Turkish population that we've always been like thick as thieves. They contribute towards the economy. I mean, they've got me out of tight spots in the end. We've worked together. We've fought together. Have they got to go as well?
Yeah, mate, they've all got to go. This is the thing. They've all got to go. It's not about how nice they are. It's not, I always use the line, it's not personal, it's necessary. And the future of our people is more important than your personal friendships. And I will die on that hill. It doesn't matter how well you know these people, how friendly you are. They are still foreign. We are still being demographically replaced. The future of our people belongs to our people. And without it, there is no England. If there's no English, there's no England. And at the moment, the direction we're going, there will be no England one day.
What about Frank Bruno and Ian Wright? Would you send them packing?
Yeah, I would, yeah, personally. But here's the thing with immigration. No one cared about a Frank Bruno or an Ian Wright 20, 30 years ago because the demographics were still secure. This is going back to the 90s when we was around, I think it was like 89, 90% of the population. That's our future secure. People aren't looking over their shoulder thinking, oh, we're getting replaced. We've got rape gangs over here. We've got migrants in hotels over here. The whole thing's been exacerbated now. Nobody really cared about the odd minority back in the day because it wasn't an issue. It's like, oh, look, we've got the friendly black guy. That's how everyone see it. Now we've got a million friendly black guys, and where do you draw the line? Because you can't just say, well, that one's okay because he sort of shares our values. That one's okay because he's Christian, but that one's not because he's not Christian. But they all come from the same place and they all do the same things anyway. So it's irrelevant.
What about the Poles, Lithuanians, Germans? Would you send them packing too?
So it's complicated. With the Europeans, it's slightly different because they are more culturally similar to our people. They are even taken aspects away from language difficulties. Like you could assimilate a German within 2-3 generations and it would not really be much noticed in terms of our people. And it wouldn't really, in terms of majorly affect the demographics. Of course, I wouldn't want millions of Germans coming over. I would say, no, that's ridiculous. But the odd few, that's not problematic. But when you've got non-whites coming over, that creates a problematic issue where the demographic decline is changing. The white population is...
Well, the question is for Steve is that if, let's say, a Lithuanian or, I don't know, like a Pole were to commit a crime, would he then deport them? But then he's saying that, you can assimilate a German or Lithuanian or a Pole. And he's right to an extent because the Polish that I've met or I know in the UK, they can speak English, but I, in my opinion, still think they're culturally different. If I don't know if Steve classes Slavs as white, but I do think that the way he's coming off is that he's an absolutist in a sense that we can kick all the non-white indigenous people out, but the whites that are quote unquote similar are okay. So if there was like a foreign criminal, he'd prefer to keep them here. I would think, because they're just white.
Mm.
I think.
Yeah, that would also be something for the left to point at, like, as hypocrisy, like especially if you have like a really dysgenic Polish person or like a really criminal Lithuanian, whatever, that he
there was one person in my local area who ended up stalking a woman and ended up murdering her. And he was into some like sick, weird sex fetish. He was a Pole, and he ended up murdering a British white woman. And he eventually like self-deported. Well, what ended up happening was he went to prison, and his wife and he had 2 kids, but he was into had like sex toys or something weird stuff, and his wife ended up having to leave because her husband ended up murdering someone. So I made the case that if you want to continue, your point was about the whole white thing.
If it's like a foreign migrant, and especially if they haven't been granted like residency or citizenship yet, and they exhibit like really bad behaviors, like high criminality, then I would deport them. It's also like important from the case of like optics and like not giving the left apple, because like if you are like this super hard racial purist, it's like, even if a black person's like super exemplary, been here for generations, needs to be deported, but then like you get some like Eastern European who is like a really crappy person, and then you don't deport them, it's something for the left to point out. It's just like, it kind of smells of like really like dogmatic racialism and like hypocrisy. Like obviously you need to filter within like a race as well, because dysgenics do exist, and the bell curve doesn't mean that ooga booga, all white people genius, all black people really dumb and criminal. It just doesn't mean that. Like, it's a distribution. So you should like be careful about like immigrants of your race as well, and especially if hypothetically like a government decided to exploit your racialism and just dump all of their like dysgenic people or all of their like madhouse patients into your country.
Yeah, like with Pakistan, they deport a lot of their criminals here.
Yeah, hypothetically, like the Poland's like, let's just dump all the crazy people in like the new white nat UK. that would kind of challenge that sort of principle.
Declining, and these people are very foreign to us. Like, Europeans can live amongst each other and be unified to an extent because you're from the same continent, you have similar histories, even if they are complicated. But when you go to places like Africa and Asia and India and so forth, these people are clearly foreign. They're clearly very different to us, and they should not be allowed in. Now, I'm not saying we should let in millions of Poles. I voted Brexit for the very reason to get rid of these people. But I'm not saying the odd 1 or 2 Poles is problematic compared to 1 or 2 Africans. 1 or 2 Africans in your village is more problematic than 1 or 2 Polish people.
Is there a touch of white supremacy about you?
No, I wouldn't say there's a touch of white supremacy. I'll just say I put my race first, I put my people first, I put my ethnicity first. That's before me, before anything else. And if I got in the way of our people being, if I was in a situation where I was in the way and it prevented our people from progressing, I would step back and I'll go, right, I'm done. But I see it as I have a role to play at the moment. Our people need to be woken up. At the moment, they are very much sleepwalking into demographic replacement. A lot of people have kind of like you, like sympathetic views to foreigners, and they think, this person's fine, what about this person, he's Christian and so forth. And the mindset needs to be moved away from that, because you have to think long term. You have to think as a collective, not as an individual. And you have to sit back and go, okay, so so let's just use a random example. I won't say you, but a random person.
You can use me.
Okay, so let's just say you. A random person's got a friend who's black. He's from the Congo or whatever and so forth. And you're like, I love this guy. He's great. He sings the national anthem, like he supports the local club or whatever, right? But that doesn't change the fact that he's still replacing us as a people. It doesn't change the fact that they don't belong here. That doesn't mean that we hate this person. Once he goes home, I wish him well. Hope he has a great life in their own country. But here is a problem.
What are your views on Adolf Hitler?
I've never really been asked that question, to be honest.
That's why you're here.
Some good policies. I wouldn't agree with everything.
I mean, what like an opponent of the theory would say is that they're not replacing you. It's just like a demographic shift, and demographic shifts have been occurring since time immemorial. Like they're not like physically coming here and like grabbing a white Briton, kicking them into space, and then like taking their house in such a way.
Yeah, because that was a point that Steve Law was just trying to make, but I think he was a bit weak on, where it was just like, oh, they're just coming here and taking the stuff. But then that's been allowed through policy, not because they're incentive. And obviously there's like a lot of opportunities to go there, but obviously, yeah, between Muddy and the Martyrs, I do think there might be genuine people that have come here to seek asylum. I don't think all of them are going to be dysgenic savages, supposedly. Maybe people from Burts, but maybe people legally came here. But again, I'm not going into CivNat territory too much.
Well, even with like racial Nazism, you need some CivNat criteria, as I kind of explained before. Like racism. You need like sort of disciplinarian criteria of like, you know, even white immigrants need to meet certain standards and not be criminals and super dysgenic and whatever.
Once he goes home, I wish him well. Hope he has a great life in their own country. But here is a problem.
Like as I've wrote in my kind of essay, it would be like an interesting form of cooperation where you could maybe help them industrialize, give them that sort of developmental aid, not just like throw food aid at them, because that actually destroys their agriculture with like free competition.
To do with US foreign aid, to do with like one farmer gets free grain and the other one doesn't now.
It's basically Thomas Sankara said something like that, that the white countries through the UNA, they just throw us food. We don't just want food, just give us tractors so we can learn to farm for ourselves. As some Chinese proverb has stated, teach a man or like give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day, teach a man to fish and he'll eat for life. So it needs to be some sustainable program that actually helps them get out of the vicious cycle of underdevelopment. But a lot of corporations, I think, they want to keep them poor so they could get like cheaper raw materials.
Your views on Adolf Hitler?
I've never really been asked that question, to be honest.
That's why you're here.
Some good policies. I wouldn't agree with everything. Probably hugely misunderstood. Wouldn't die on the hill of defending Adolf Hitler, but I would say he's very much misunderstood politician. I'd say a lot of the stuff that he advocated for in the German people would do wonders for our people right now.
What do you think about the Nazi regime?
In terms of what way?
Are you for it or against it? Or would you have been for it or would you have been against?
If I was in Germany in 1930s, I would have been straight behind them.
So you would have been quite happy gassing all them Jews?
Well, that's a conversation for another day. I wouldn't encourage murdering of any people. But what I'm saying is...
That's definitely a conversation for...
That's a really hard subject to approach because of all the cultural programming that Adolf is like the arch villain. Or like he's like ontological evil. Like I would start with the negatives because it's something that the most people think. And then I'll bring up like some things about like, yeah, he was a great public speaker and maybe he was a autist. And he kind of correctly pointed out some things about, you know, countries not allowing Germany to conquer while themselves possessing 10 times the territory. But I would kind of start with disavowals of like the dumb policies, the kind of the like really crappily done research about Jewish genetics and like these assumptions that they, you know, crapped out, and the Führer principle. And then I would like say I agree with these. Yeah, that was like. That was something that Kremie and Ryan Falk dug up in like 2018, that they banned IQ tests because Jews got too high scores. And then they wanted to lead like these Aryan tests, which were, a lot of them were not even like intelligence tests. They were knowledge like quizzes with like, who was Bismarck? Why should you pray? Why should you obey the Führer? Like they obviously don't test your like processing power. If we equate like human brains to computers, if I want to know which computer can, let's say, run better graphics or do more calculations faster, then I wouldn't just check how many German leader names can it memorize and how much can it conform to like the Natsok worldview, I would actually test its processing power. So yeah, it's basically like any sort of admission that the Hitler regime did anything like interesting or positive or smart is like really hard to make. You should, for the optics sake, always start with like the condemnations of the bad elements. And I guess like it's an honest answer to say if he was a German in the 1940s. Like if I was born under the Hitler regime or earlier and only received their approved education, I would have probably been a Wignat and believed all of their theories and ideologies, and that Adolf is like some infallible god. But kind of saying that out loud is, it's really tough, and it kind of makes a lot of people get triggered and like see you as a Wignat. Yeah, really hard topic to tread on.
Okay, so we can go into it. I very much doubt the figures on that.
You did say nothing's off the table.
Yeah, you did, yeah.
So would you be for the gassing of the Jews if you was a German back in 1936?
No, I don't think we should have to gas people. I'll just say remove them. This is my position, but I very much doubt the credibility of all of that information. I'm not saying it's all lies, but I don't think everything's as we heard.
Oh, do you think the numbers have been exaggerated?
Yeah, something that Jared Taylor said about that thing is that you cannot be a crank on more than one issue. Also, Rand Falk said that. Basically, if you have one like heterodox view that you believe that, let's say, eugenics can work or races have different average intelligences, I guess, above the standard deviation. And then you also have the view that that the Shoah can be revised, or you're like a Holocaust revisionist. Then like a lot of normal people will also see you as a crank because you like disagree with the mainstream narrative on so many subjects, regardless of if your claims are true or untrue or well cited. If you are like outside of the mainstream and too many questions, a lot of normal people will consider you crazy. I guess he would support the Madagascar plan. I hope to get into like the big
about the Madagascar plan, because obviously that was it entirely just the Jewish population deported to Madagascar, or was there some other things to do?
Someone else as well.
Other groups, because I know
No. I'm not. I don't remember there being any other groups. And also, like before the war, Adolf constantly complained in his speeches that the Western democracies didn't take in the Jews. Like for example, the U.S. I think they had like the 1920s Immigration Act, and they turned back a ship with Jewish refugees that later got sent into Auschwitz.
Oh.
And so like. Hypothetically, if you went back in time and your goal was to be like outside of Germany and save as many Jews in a certain time period, you could have done that. But then like a lot of concerns came, like for example, the British naval blockade, and then like many people in the SS wanted to kind of like use the Jews for slave labor to get like free labor, basically, or I guess at the price of food. You still have to feed them, but you'd have to pay them, and you could like they could not strike, and you could get them to live in like really bad, crappy conditions. So you could get really free, like really cheap labor. There was like that practical concern for the Reich as well. Basically, work them to death was certain officers' plan.
Very much so, yes.
Okay. What about, is gassing one Jew too many?
Gassing anyone's too many. You shouldn't be gassing anyone. Like I very much advocate for the most peaceful solution to fix demographic replacement. The position I advocate for with remigration is very much, we're going to return you to your homeland peacefully. There's going to be no harm done to you, and both sides are going to live happily ever after. I'm not here for saying, right, let's just line them all up against the wall and shoot them. That's not the line I would ever advocate for. For one, I'd have my doors kicked off in seconds. And two, I just don't think it's the sort of thing we need to go down the route. British people are never going to get behind something like that, even if that was the solution to the problem. British people are a little bit more moderate, so we wouldn't ever entertain that anyway. So my position is I wouldn't entertain that. I'd push for remigration, a peaceful solution to demographic replacement. No harm will come to anyone.
What about the 500,000 Sikhs, the British Indians that fought in the world wars, that defended our shores? What would you do with those people?
They didn't fight for us. They fought for the empire. They fought for their own self-interests as well.
And the empire's gone.
enough?
No. Okay. There's Gurkhas. There's Gurkhas. They fight for us. Most people have a lot of respect for the Gurkhas. But where I come from, the town just over from me, Cheriton, I live in Folkestone, town just over Cheriton, Gurkha stronghold. The whole town is basically Gurkha now. And that's because there's an army base there and they serve there, but they're just foreign mercenaries. They're paid to come over and fight for us. That doesn't mean they get the right to our homeland. They should be paid and sent back. That should be the logical solution.
In terms of meritocracy, what have you done for the country that supersedes what the Sikhs or the specific Sikhs done for our country in the world wars?
I don't think you should ever use.
I mean, like even that's where like the purism spurgery comes into play. Like even Henry VIII had like a black trumpeter, I think.
really?
So yeah, that was it was mentioned in like the erroneously named book Black Tudors, but
Oh, is this another?
I guess you would like.
we students.
No, that is the Tudors didn't have African blood. They were like a European dynasty, obviously. But yes, like European nobility like to keep some like exotic servants around. So they had like a servant of like a really far place ethnic groups to like kind of brag, hey, look, I'm so wealthy, I can get servants of such an exotic group. Like Napoleon had like some Arab servants with him, and he had like a trumpeter who was black, Henry VIII. So they've always had some. And like with the Gurkhas, like especially if someone has received the VC, I think like that is an amount of dedication to the country that could be grounds for an exception. Like even if you're like an ethno-nat, yeah, like blithering genius would be interesting to see like how he would respond to this this video, because he actually made like a kind of video critiquing racial purism.
That argument. So my ancestors fought for this country, for my people to have a future. They didn't fight for it so Indians can come over and live here and open up a corner shop. Nobody fought for that. Nobody wanted that. If you went back and...
To be fair, most of them were conscripted. Like they didn't like, oh yeah, I'm gonna make this like thoughtful process of why, if I want to fight or not, and why I want to fight. No, it's like the government that I guess they elected the representatives that put that government into power, but the government decided, hey, Germany should not be violating Polish sovereignty and like invading Poland and stuff. We should ally with them and declare war. And then conscription, so you have no choice. So a lot of these like ancestors didn't even like choose to fight for the country. They were forced by the government at the threat of, I guess, imprisonment or execution for like draft dodging or desertion.
Spoke to all of the veterans. I can guarantee you a good 99% of them would turn around and go, I do not stand for that. I do not want that. So using the argument of...
Zoomer went over a lot of the letters of the veterans. Would be nice to see like statistics on what percentage of veterans hold like kind of anti-immigration or ethno-nat views, and like what policies they want and what policies they...
Migrants born here, apparently, I did look at the statistics and they say they're quite against other like mass immigration as well.
I was speaking about like veterans specifically, like World War II, because they're kind of being lionized by the mainstream media. Like, oh my God, these guys fought for Nazism, they're heroes, and they kind of forget that a lot of them, first of all, they were not like super ideologically fanatical. They were conscripted a lot of times like against their will. Like they didn't volunteer, and then like secondly that they were from like a really socially conservative generation actually. So like what ends up happening is that I guess 4chan trolls can just pull up on Twitter and actually show like studies done among the veterans and like the population in like the 1940s, where like the US white like soldiers would rather lose the war than abolish segregation, and where they believe that the Jews were kind of dodging hard tasks and being gold bricks in their jargon, statistically more. So yeah, like these veterans actually had really politically incorrect views for the modern times, and like socially conservative and like ethnocentric. Yeah, so they aren't like...
Yeah, because obviously, like, if you asked a veteran, like, 100 years, it's why you see those, I think Nick Griffin talked about this, where you had a bunch of, there's multiple parts of footage, even what happened last month with, there was this thing that happened, I think it was all these, like, veterans being asked, oh, well, do you think it was worth serving this country? And a lot of them said no. a lot of them said it wasn't.
Yeah, like
kind of the
recently Reddit kind of recently like r/Europe took down one of these interviews. It is not even like anything explicit. I think they kind of sense it because like the veteran didn't say like anything specific. He said that it wasn't worth it looking at what Britain is now. Maybe he's a far left communist who believed that the Thatcherite privatization ruined the country and we should have like more welfare and stuff. He didn't even say anything specific, but the Reddit mods were always like, "Soy, we need to ban this now. It's not relevant to Europe."
He's being heckin' racist. Soy is soyism hit.
But yeah, that would be interesting to see if like any veteran would just say, like, yeah, I would prefer to live under the Adolf regime rather than see the current state of the UK. Like I've never seen them like explicitly say that.
Yeah, because I think that's like taken out of context a bit. I think where it's like, oh yeah, they'd rather fight for the Nazis or something, which I don't think that was the case. Like they just think that the war wasn't worth fighting for. It doesn't mean that they'd be on the Nazi side, that type of thing.
Yeah. You could have the position. Well, basically, what I read about the Ribbentrop dispatches with the French and English on like Adolf's speeches and peace offers. He basically, because he was like a hard racialist, he didn't like believe that it was worth going to war with Britain and France over like getting Alsace and Lorraine back or like the German colonies back, because he could just go to the east and take like Slavic lands and expand his empire into the east. And if Britain and France had just like stepped aside, I don't personally think Adolf would have like invaded them or like would have wanted to invade them that hard. But like I read the French president's speech in like September the 2nd, September 3rd, and he basically said that the rationale behind declaring war on Germany was that Germany had broken a lot of the agreements before. And I need to check, but in the Zweites Buch, Adolf does rant about how America is Germany's future rival and how maybe like the war with America is inevitable. I've heard a historian claim that. I don't remember exactly if there's the passage is there that claims that, but yeah, I need to check. But yeah, like the UK chose to be in alliance with Poland and could have just chosen to not be and like let Poland get steamrolled. Or maybe even like pressured it to give Danzig to Germany. Because what that would do is it would take the casus belli out. Because like even Adolf had to give speeches to justify wars. Even he couldn't just like snap his fingers, I want to go to war with a random country. He had to spin it somehow to the German populace and the military that a war was necessary. So
Soviet Russia invaded parts of I think parts of Poland, and then it's like, oh, that's a reason why we should go to war with them.
Yeah, the Soviets justified their like Soviet-Polish War of 1939 by saying that the Polish government had collapsed, and the Polish were really oppressive towards Ukrainian and Belarusian workers. To be fair, like the Polish government, wasn't really like didn't govern them the best way and was somewhat dismissive of their rights and opinions. And there have been like peasant uprising and protests in that area and stuff. With Finland, they had like the Mainila incident where they claimed that Finland had shelled their border troops. So the response was not let's take the League of Nations investigation committee like the non-aggression treaty stipulates. It's just let's cowabunga invade and try to install a puppet Otto Kuusinen. With Romania, I don't know what the justification for like Bessarabian Norm Bukovina is. I need to check what they probably invented something there as well. With the Baltic states, it was that first of all they need friendship treaties to guarantee Soviet security, and then they claimed that the Baltic states violated the guarantees of security, so they'll bring in more troops. And then they had these very free and fair elections with one party running. They surprisingly won. So yeah.
A mother from their child if their child was non-European.
No, because I'd let you all go together.
But
That's-
what if the British person had to stay where they are?
But why would that ever be a situation? This is a weird hypothetical where it's
it's just to get inside your mind how extreme you'd go.
You can take it down to that, like, there are various subjects, nuances in these situations where, for instance, there are people that have been in those situations, and it is complicated. Of course, it is complicated. It's not something that should ever be encouraged.
What, to procreate with another race, or
to mix race? I don't think it should ever be encouraged because, one, it creates a child of nowhere. They're a child that's not part or parcel of their own people.
Just to emphasise what Steve Laws is saying here, so basically with all the Spergy research that I've done on the whole race mixing question, basically to do with your identity. Now, obviously, the guy who's like bald, he brought this up, and he basically said that, if someone's like part or quarter Greek, would you pass it off? And Steve was basically saying that, well, technically they're still European, which, yeah, he is correct in this case, because obviously this goes into do with identity issues where if someone's like half black, so for example, if there's like a mulatto woman or whatever, that can create a lot of like disconnection between, you're not really white and you're not really black. So obviously this could create a lot of identity issues. You don't really know what you are. And obviously people would go, oh, but they're British. Well, they're not really anything. And obviously people would say that that's racist, but that it's more to do with your identity's tied to your ancestors. So because most of my ancestors were white, and the majority of them are obviously found within Britain and England or whatever, I would obviously identify as being English. But obviously if one of my ancestors was like black, for example, like the one drop rule that you brought up, Fyodor, I do think that in America there was this law where basically said if you have one drop of Negro, you're technically part black or something, and then you would not be classed as pure.
Well, they're technically black.
And just to finish off my point was that Steve talks about identity issues, and that happens because it creates like Stockholm syndrome, where it's like you don't identify with any groups, and that's why on census, which we'll bring up now, where he puts like black, white, and then mixed. That's why it's on there on the census now, and there are other health reasons why you shouldn't procreate with another race. Like obviously, if you're closer to European, this can affect. Something like Ryan Volt brought up with bone marrow transplants. So, for example, not to get too spergy about this, but basically, if you get, let's say, hypothetically, you get leukemia, and for example, your white blood cell count is too high, and you need a bone marrow transplant. But the problem with this is that in order for you to have a bone marrow transplant, it depends on which racial group you're closer to. So if you're European in America, for example, is 79%, and from African descent, you are 29%.
Basically, program short, you need to find someone with a similar admixture to have a compatible transplant, right? It's really hard to do.
Yeah, just to finish off that point, I think that it is important to, when you do race mix, and obviously it depends on your ethnic mix. So, for example, my cousin has married a biracial black woman, and they've had a kid. He's white, he's ginger, he's as white as he probably could. Maybe the nose is a little bit different, I don't know. But obviously, if he, in theory, was to get leukemia, he would probably more likely to find a bone marrow donor. Obviously, that depends on, you have to take like a HLA test, human leukocyte antigen, in order to find the bone marrow. And if you don't find a donor, you have to either have a multi-ethnic bone marrow transplant, or you have to find someone who is also mixed. So I will just leave it on that point off there.
And they're also not part and parcel of the people. So from the mother's African and the father's English, you're no longer seen as English and you're no longer seen as African. You are seen as an other, and it becomes problematic. So this is where a lot of mixed race people have resentment, and a lot of them turn that resentment towards the British people, and they actually promote immigration and so forth. So these people, it is a complicated subject. I understand this, but these people have an inherent bias towards their immigrant parent. I've seen it. You must have seen it. Let's use a prime example. Bob Villain, I Heard You Want Your Country Back. Half Jamaican, half English. Everyone in the country was calling for his deportation when he was sitting there saying, Heard You Want Your Country Back. He's a mixed race fella. So the public will move to that position when they feel threatened. And this is where
Was it the rapper guy who said, Heard You Want Your Country Back? Hey, shut the F up, that guy.
Yeah, he basically said you want your country back and things like that, and he's actually, he's obviously looked very like black. But obviously, to do with that guy, I don't think necessarily every mixed race person is going to have, attitudes or even hostility towards the native population or something, because they're like resentment and they identify more towards the immigrant parent. I think that it's a case of environment in to do with, if that person's, like for example, a lot of black people are taught to that white is out to get them and all this other stuff that comes from a lot of sensationalization off of like cops and the purple and all these other things that come culturally, I think, as well, pushed on black people. And I do think that obviously the resentment if someone is like half white, for example, but I think it's more of a case, it's like making the case of every black person hates every white person, which even though it's encouraged, I do think that whilst they have a strong in-group preference, and yes, a majority of them do hold grudges, I do think that if someone was mixed race, I don't think they would on average holders.
Like there's some interesting experience that Jared Taylor actually had where like blacks from Africa who hadn't been like subject to the rap culture. Like Thomas Sowell also pointed out, they're less obnoxious actually. They're really skeptical of like the American hood or like the hood gangster culture that has developed in like Europe and America, like in these like black hoods in these areas. And interestingly enough, they're like more respectful and more understanding towards like white people wanting to stay a majority in their own country, because like they're easy to argue it from that perspective of like, hey, what would you think if, let's say, like Nigeria was like 57% Chinese? And I'd be like, yeah, that would be really weird. I wouldn't really like it. So that paradoxically, they are less anti-white.
Because the others, whereas you got the immigrant parent and the English parent, that child belongs to no one, essentially. Even when you fill out your government passport form, it's white British, mixed other. That's what they would be. And unfortunately, these people are victims of immigration, and somewhere along the line,
I don't get what Steve said about a victim of immigration, because there is a notion that, when you mentioned on racial purity, that Oblivion Genius.
Let me answer that very simply. Like the third generation African British man, he didn't choose to be born as an Afro in Britain. His like ancestors chose to migrate. So he isn't like guilty of anything. He isn't like, I will get born in Britain as a black man to destroy the white race.
Yeah, that was the point like Elliot was trying to emphasize on.
Yeah. That was the point. Like he's a victim. Like obviously it's like hard on them because like people even in the most like shit Libby areas or liberal countries, like people instinctively recognize, hey, your ethnogenesis in Africa, like you're genetically really different from most of the population, even if they're like lily white liberals. Something that Rehab Room pointed out as kind of like an Arab cell is that like they kind of notice like especially like these liberal women who are like, Black Lives Matter, racism sucks, all these stupid white misogynistic racists should shut the hell up. But in their like dating preference and how they like actually treat, let's say, Indian men or like black men who are not like top athlete basketball players, celebrities, they treat them like garbage. They don't give them a chance. So even like a lot of liberals, they just virtue signal and don't like fully act on their like claimed correct behaviors. Yeah, that kind of makes life hard if you're like from a different race in these areas. Like obviously, yeah, the government will give you, I guess, welfare and affirmative action, but surprisingly, you'll still get certain vibes when it's tried for like dating, for example. That's what like Rehab Room focuses on.
A line's going to have to be drawn in the sand, and that someone's going to have to go, enough is enough. Otherwise, we're going to have a nation that is like Brazil, where everyone's mixed race. There's no inherent culture. There's no dominant ethnic group. It's just hellhole. And that's the direction that is heading in Britain, unfortunately.
Is there any part of you that's scared? Do you fear anything, any kind of attack? I'll give you an example. Now, I know that I'm quite happy to speak out against radical Islam. I'm also happy to speak out against Muslims that don't speak out against radical Islam. It's their moral obligation to call out their own community. And I'm happy to say that, irrespective that I've got Muslim friends. I've sat up drinking and partying and doing real haram stuff with some of my friends I've grown up with that are Muslim,
with
and I've had
plenty.
debates with them. You know, they've got a glass of red wine in their hand and a £50 note hanging out their nose talking about the Prophet. I'm like, no, you're not a Muslim. So, and you must know well enough by now that I'm as outspoken.
There's actually like a meme war within the Muslim community as well, where like there are liberal Muslims who are like, yeah, we need to tolerate the gays. I'm a gay Muslim. I'm a Muslim that eats pork and drinks alcohol. And then like the conservative Tucker Carlson-ish, not even like ISIS level radicals, they just like say, like, bro, you're not a Muslim. Like, the Quran literally says
It was like that
alcohol is
with Andrew Tate
haram.
as well. I wanted to make a point where it's like, he says he converted to Islam and says he's a Muslim, but then he does all the opposite, like, filming porn and, doing drinking and gambling, which is also haram as well. He does everything the opposite. And plus, when you convert to Islam as well, you're supposed to pay all the debts of the people you've wronged. So, like, all the people he scammed, he's supposed to give that money back, but he hasn't.
Yeah, like most of his wealth is earned in haram ways, like cam girl and like promoting gambling and like crypto scams. It is pretty haram. So yeah, this is well, it's the aesthetics. I think he adopted these views because he wanted to appeal to young Muslim audiences.
That are mostly from Saudis as well.
Yeah, like there was a journalist who kind of went around and like looked at all these people in Serbia. A lot of them were like Malaysian, Indonesian, some Saudis, and like there was some like Malaysian kid who was like, hey, I gave my family's like food subsidy money to take university, so I thought I could become rich and get a Bugatti and like feed them all, but like the crypto crashed, please help me get my money back before we're gonna starve. And this is like really, yeah, he's really cutthroat in these areas. Like he doesn't like have mercy on poor Muslim kids from like Malaysia or something. He just or Indonesia. He just takes all their money and just like, ha ha ha, get scammed, brokey. You didn't work hard enough. That's why you're poor. That's why you're poor. You didn't work hard enough.
Most men. And I know that I'm a target for a radical Islamist. They'd love to shut me up. Who's the most attractive black woman you can think of?
I don't think black women are attractive.
Not any of them.
Not any of them.
Any Asian women?
No. White women.
Just white women.
Yeah.
So, for example,
I mean, I guess I don't know if he's telling the truth. He would like bring up like the hottest one, maybe.
Yeah,
with like a lot of these
maybe we
hardcore.
can bring up the meme, never ask a white supremacist the race of his girlfriend.
Yeah. Like it's the same thing with like the hardcore gay bashers like Fuentes. It's like a lot of the ones who are the loudest, they fold the fastest. Like some like Aryan Nations 1488 alpha male.
It was like that with,
whatever.
I'd like to bring up a point.
He's a Filipina.
There was his account called Comfy Friend. It was like an Australian grey patrol type of person, and he ended up being caught that he was race mixing with like Latinas. He would DMing them saying, "Oh, you want my big Aryan?"
I mean, it's not mixing on unless you produce offspring, to be fair.
Yeah, like you can find them attractive and like you want to bang them, but it's not like, I'm not like an absolutist. Like it doesn't mean like breeding type of thing.
Yeah.
So, for example, if Halle Berry was sat opposite you saying, Steve, let me give you a blowjob, nobody will find out. Would you refuse that blowjob?
Yeah, she's brown. I don't know why you're so shocked.
I'm just thinking about the comment section now.
The comment section can fire away, mate. If it's white, it's all right. If it's brown,
you're not having it.
Nah.
But if it's, the problem is like, I guess the hypothetical troll would be to get like a mixed race person who has inherited more like white pigmentation genes. Like, let's say a female version of Tate. Would he be able to tell? Or would they like each time he goes to hook up, he's like, we need to do a 23andMe before we hook up. We need to like send it to the lab.
Yeah,
and then like when
like
it's confirmed
Fuentes would say. That's if he wasn't gay.
Yeah, that'd be funny. Just like actually the woman before we copulate in this casual relationship, I need to do a 23andMe so I will not be embarrassed on the internet that I ever bred with a half breed or a mixed race person, because I'm a really pure white man and I really respect white people. Mixed.
Yeah, she's black. Mum, I think her mum's black and her dad's white.
I can't even tell you what it smells and tastes and feels like, but I quite like some of the foreign people that are here. I enjoy what they contribute. I enjoy the difference. I don't want to live in an echo chamber, but not at the detriment to the country's safety also. So there
there are examples of, I guess, multicultural success or like foreign racial success. In Russia, Pushkin's grandfather was a certain Count Ganibald, who apparently was brought in as Peter the Great's servant from either Ethiopia or somewhere from the Guinea coast. Probably Ethiopia, since Russia had like relations with the Orthodox Ethiopians. And he became an engineer and a general, like general of the engineering troops. So, well, yeah, obviously high
Was that
IQ Afros
Pushkin
exist.
again?
The sky is blue. Yeah, so basically, an African immigrant in the 18th century became an engineer general in the Russian Imperial Army.
Okay.
There is leeway with me.
Okay, so this guy wants some like he doesn't like it too bland. Obviously, you can like import traditions. Are you okay with like multicultural towns or something with like having a Chinatown or an Afro town in your city? What's your opinion on that?
I think that, well, if people want to open their shops and have like a Chinese or like a hairdresser's, that's fine. But the thing is that these shops, like for example, Turkish barbers that you might have heard in the UK,
That's scandals, yeah.
yeah, they're obviously, a lot of them are used, not saying all of them, but a lot of them are used to money launder. And then if there's like, for example, a fish and chip shop that's has a foreigner working there, is like Turkish or whatever, maybe that would be an exception. But I don't want to see shops being used in just a front for like a criminal activity. Yeah, if there are reports of money laundering, then I want the shops shut down, even if they're like there just to make a living, which obviously there is incentive that they're there and they're committing crime. But when it comes in terms of if you walk down the street, obviously what Steve Laws will get into a little bit later is that he wants to.
You told me to like check on the spurginess. So basically, we're assuming that no criminal enterprise is just like having a Chinatown or Caribbean town or Nigeria town in a city. Would that be okay by you? Assuming everything else is like normal, no criminal stuff.
I would say so, yes, because I do want to see, as long as it's majority, occasional, they're like with like school systems, for example. But obviously, some people would say that's too civic nationalist, as what Steve is trying to say to this guy. And I do think
even if you try to preserve a racial majority, though, if you're like policies, let's keep like let's say 85% white, like Poland or something, then it's still like somewhat racial because one of your like aim goal criteria is still racial. Like non-civic nationalism or ethno-nationalism, I guess, shouldn't just mean like you need to be like 100% pure white or bust. It's a really like purist definition.
Yeah, obviously, I'd avoid the purism as what Steve is going on here about.
There is movement. So let's go back to why your FNAC group didn't think that I'd actually have you on my show.
Because for one, ethno-nationalists and civic nationalists have always tried to have debates. I know this is a discussion, not a debate, but there are a lot of ethno-nationalists that would like to debate the influential civic nationalists, so both audiences can hear the conversation and they can make their own mind up. But at the moment, a lot of civic nationalists sort of, once they've got their audience, they gatekeep that away from the ethno-nationalists because, God forbid, they hear the truth. And that's kind of problematic. The only person who's done it from the civic nationalist movement who's actually entertained it, other than speaking with you now, was Lawrence Fox. And that debate managed to bring an awful lot of people over to my position. A lot of people messaged me after saying,
yeah, I think when I watched this debate, you can look this up, but it's basically on X when there was a space with Lawrence Fox, who's like a civic nationalist, as Steve says, and basically he was advocating for the usual like shit lib type of thing where you've got as long as they're like Christian then it's fine because then it accepts the nation or something, the usual typical lines of like, as long as they accept the culture or some bollocks. And I think after watching that, when Steve was talking about and making some really good points, that actually did push me towards more ethno-nationalism, because I do think that thoughts and ideas of like, it kind of just pissed me off, and I just didn't like I think that Lawrence Fox was just making really bad arguments, I would say, and Steve was making a lot better points. That's what drew me towards that more.
With me, it was like Ryan Falk and Taylor kind of elaborated the position the best to me and kind of convinced me that it's kind of a viable option actually, and they have arguments. It never like fully convinced me of like let's do 100, but it certainly convinced me that percentages and genetic quality need to be regulated.
Yeah, kind of what you figured out.
Yeah, so if you that's the reason that like during like alt-right movements, the media likes to focus on like the spurgs and the crazy ones that yell racial slurs, because they're easier to use as propaganda because they're really unconvincing. You know, we saw the Jeff Perry rally.
Yeah.
the absolute supreme gentleman with the best facts and logic, as Ben Shapiro would say. Yeah, like these guys are no problem platforming because they're just so unconvincing. But yeah, even Steve is like, Steve does a much better job than Jeff Perry.
Yeah, I would say
not as good as Taylor would, I would say, but
yeah, like we said before, like he's very absolutist in a lot of things, and it's just like I don't think he necessarily needs to be.
Taylor doesn't want to make the whole country into like one ethnic group. He's just like, let's have free association, let's have some towns or something. You know, people would claim that, hey, maybe he's like fighting his power level, but his like default position is much softer.
Realize how wrong I was. Once I heard that debate, it was all clear as day. I've moved over to your position and so forth. And that was hundreds of people. So this is why I think a lot of people think these debates won't happen.
You and Lawrence Fox had a debate. What was the debate then?
It was
I've not seen it.
So it was on an X space. I'll send it to you when we finish this. And ultimately, it was just about immigration, basically, and his position and my position. And obviously, he's kind of more where you're at, to be honest.
I'd like a traffic light meritocracy system, like what Australia used to do. If you qualify, if you contribute, if you're kind, and we've got a full background check on you, then you're welcome. But if you step 1 foot wrong, I mean you fart in a lift, you're going home. That's probably the best way to define my view on it.
See, the obvious problem with that is you look at that's basically what a H-1B visa is in America. And all of the Indians have come over on those visas and taken over all of the work from all of the Americans in the tech industry and so forth, and just completely decimated them. And that's a
quick point I'll make on what Steve is saying. When I spoke to one of the regional organisers for Homeland, I think I was speaking to Alistair, and he said that a lot of the people in the tech industry are like Indian and Nigerian. And they took up all the tech jobs, and they usually come to, for example, the UK on like scam visas. So obviously it's very hard to get a job in the tech industry if people, within that market, maybe for like specifics, but, a lot of the software development is done just on scam CVs. And that's the thing, the majority of these like Indians and Nigerians don't know how to program as well.
Yeah, the thing is that I was convinced when I was kind of a shitlib that they're just like they're born into poverty, so they like work really hard to become programmers, but they're just like so much better than the overspoiled native workers from like European countries. But I've seen like some chud YouTuber, I think Right Wing Coalition, making a video about stats that show that they're not actually better, they're worse, but where they excel at is that they're cheap for these companies. So the company is willing to have lower quality for they're willing to have like lower quality, but if they can like get away with paying less. So classic ultra capitalist corporate shenanigans, profit over people.
The capitalist.
Yeah, the capitalist thing. Need my profit. Need more profit, need another mega yacht, need another million.
Skilled in what? For one, because you always hear of these high-skilled immigrants coming over, and then the next thing you see is they're working at Uber Eats or Just Eat or something like that. And I understand some of them come over and there are doctors and so forth, right? I understand that.
Well,
Why are we not training our own?
yeah, there's a lot of brown delivery people here.
Yeah, there's a lot of that's the thing. Even in my area, and also nearer like to the cities, a lot of them are like just on like scooters, like Just Eats and Deliveroo. As you see, it's mostly foreigners on scooters that are just doing these deliveries. I don't see them being doctors and engineers.
Well, hypothetically, also, if you get them as illegals, the benefit to the capitalist or the corporation is that they can say, hey, look, if you get into a labor dispute, if you demand anything extra than like poverty wages from me, I'm going to report you and you're going to get deported or something. They can like threaten with that. It's worse than Dubai, where they like basically they take a bunch of Pakistanis and Indians and like Indonesians, Muslims from poor countries, and they basically take their passports and make them slaves, where they basically charge more for housing than they pay in salaries. So basically they're eternal debt slaves. So like we're not as cool as the like Dubai princes and stuff, but still it's pretty cutthroat. Yeah, that's where you should be skeptical of the corporates, because they obviously value profit over you.
You know those group of Pakistani men that turned up to your house with baseball bats? I know you dealt with the situation fine, but let's just say it went the other way and they smashed you to pieces with them baseball bats, and they smashed your legs in so bad that they nearly had to be amputated, and you got shipped to the hospital, and an Asian doctor saved your legs from being removed. Would you still want him to go back to his home country?
Yeah, because in my vision of what Britain should be, that would be a British doctor. The only reason it's not is because our people haven't been given those opportunities, and there's so many immigrants in the country now that we need more immigrant doctors to actually treat the immigrants that are coming over. And it's a catch-22. It's like a Ponzi scheme, just keeps going and going and going. Sure, I'd be absolutely grateful that they saved me, but I would still deport them. They're just doing a job at the end of the day. They're paid to do a job. It's no different than me being a painter and I've had to go and paint some foreigner's house. I'm not doing it because I want to do it. I'm doing it because I'm paid to paint that house.
Saving your legs is quite a big thing. And also
the Americans, it's important to note that Britain classifies Asians differently. It's not only East Asians, it's like Pakistanis and India, like Hindus.
On the census.
That's
like Asian.
Something that Ryan Falk pointed out to me a couple of years ago.
Yeah, so like obviously an American would think that an Asian is just like a Chinese or Korean.
Chinese, Korean, Japanese,
in by UK definition, it's like a Pakistani or an Indian.
Yeah, technically it's all Asia. Yeah, like a Russian who lives east of the Urals is also an Asian in a certain sense.
Another point I did want to make, what this guy is giving a hypothetical, like, oh, Steve Laws is completely battered by some Pakis and then he's been saved by an Asian doctor. I do think that when you've got, obviously, if that happened to him, it'd be very terrible, but if someone, like, for example, I've had Indian or like a black like doctor and dentist help me out. And obviously, yeah, he's making a point that immigration is that bad to the point where, yeah, we have to have more immigrant doctors just to like keep the cycle going. And obviously, I would prefer to have like a white dentist or doctor, not because I'm like an absolutist, but obviously, you know, I want to see my own people doing their job properly. But I do think that I wouldn't go as far as to, for example, like I've done a gardening job for like a Palestinian couple or whatever. And obviously, like, you know, I've done a job for them, and obviously Steve's making a point that, oh, well, I've painted the house, but not because I want to, but because they've paid me to do a job. But obviously, in cases of, like, if they saved my life, would I want to deport them? I don't know if it would be absolutist to say that, oh, yeah, like, they all need to go, like, even if they saved me. But obviously, if they had to be deported, I wouldn't, obviously, you know, I'd probably look the other way.
Yeah, well, that's more of like a personal favor. If they had like a Victoria Cross, that'd be like a service to the country specifically.
Yeah,
like a personal. I mean, if they went out of their way to save you or like save a bunch of white people, that could be a special case as well.
Mm.
And also, this is, again, it's hypothetical, but it all has to be because this is a very kind of unlikely situation. But it's just to get an understanding of just how far you're prepared to go. How would you break it to that Asian doctor that saved your legs from being amputated? Would you say, cheers for saving my legs, mate, but you got to fuck off now? How would you word it diplomatically? Or would you just hit it?
They'd get a letter saying you're going to be deported. If they do not respond or anything, then they'd get a knock on the door saying, you've got this long, pack your stuff, you've got to go.
Would you sign it at the bottom and send him a picture of your legs?
I'd say, Steve Laws said you're deported, goodbye.
Not even a thanks for saving my legs.
Oh, if it's the person who saved my legs, well, thanks for the legs, deport. It's not going to change. You could give me £1 million, I'm still deport you. It's not going to change my opinion.
So you've got 3 daughters.
Yep.
If one of them fell in love with a black man, what would you do?
They've been told not to. They know very much the risks that comes with it. They know my opinions on this. And
so to do with the whole marrying to the nation thing, I think there was a point that Alec made where like other people would marry into the nation. Like the Celts would miscegenate with the Anglo-Saxons, but it's sort of different when someone's got 900,000 years evolution compared to different.
Yeah, they're still like Celts and Saxons, still like Europoid groups.
Yeah, I'll get into the whole, and plus, like, despite being less than 7% of London's population, interracial divorce is quite high within that higher population of non-ethnic, obviously non-Indigenous minorities. And basically, they would have, despite, like I said, 7% population, but they're 41% of divorce compared to 31% of monoracial people who get divorced. So despite being a minority, they're double the rate of divorce within the UK. And that's the same that goes for like America. If a white woman marries a black man in America, she's 200% more likely to get divorced within 10 years of marriage. And so the whole like marrying to the nation, a lot of migrants actually don't want to. A lot of them want to, obviously, there is that innate in-group preference they have closer to do. Even if you had to make the case, it wouldn't like last very long because obviously 10 years of marriage isn't like very long.
What would Jeff Berry do? It's like, if my daughter ever looked at a darky with any sort of smile on her face, I would call Moon Man with all of his brainwashing and torture machines and fix her right real good. No daughter of mine is going to marry no black-skinned censored, and they can marry their own brother. That keeps the bloodline pure, but no darkies, for heaven's sake.
Rather than do some incest maxing instead. Right.
No, some of them would unironically say that it's like less taboo to marry your brother than to marry someone of the other race, like that sort of extreme.
Yeah, I think this was another point I wanted to make on the whole, like, the decades of inbreeding and to do with first cousin marriages, and obviously in the UK they wanted to try and make it not legal to do this, but obviously, like within a case of like,
it's like a Arab and Muslim like cousin marriage tradition.
To do with like Iceland, a lot of them are married to the third cousin, which isn't as bad because genetically, apparently, it's like not as risky to do that as compared to first cousin marriage, which causes a lot of issues health wise.
What was interesting to me is the stereotype is that the most inbred people are like Alabama white Southerners. Like hillbilly Hicks.
Yeah.
And what actually turns out is that a lot of like Middle Easterners and Muslims, because of the cousin marriage and like the clan marriage systems, turn out to be more
will not do so.
But you can't help who you fall in love with.
But you can very much guide your children to stay away from foreign savages.
But if they didn't and they accidentally fell in love with a black man, would you disown your own children?
I would not let it happen. I'd go around and make sure that did not happen.
But if they, love is a whole different. There's going somewhere where you're not allowed to go, but when you get chemistry and love, you can't control that. So if that was to happen, I mean, and I've seen families destroyed because someone's fell in love with somebody and they've chosen the person they're in love with over their own parents and brothers and sisters. It happens. You got to be honest. Chemistry you can't fuck around with. So let's do it hypothetically. If one of your daughters fell in love with a black man and wanted to marry him and did marry him, would you disown her?
So here's the thing, right?
This is a politician's response now, Steve.
No, the thing is, right, at the end of the day, as you say, you can't control that, but you can very much teach and mold and guide your children to take the correct decisions in the same way you can encourage your children not to become a crackhead. It's the same mentality. You go, right, stay away from drugs.
I think that's a lot of difference between doing drugs and marrying someone or going and falling in love with them. Just saying.
If someone offers you something, do
Yeah.
not take this. If you see your children hanging around with the wrong crowd, you nip that in the bud straight away, and so forth. So there are ways you can do this to prevent that.
It reminds me of like Nazi Creeper 69, where he claims that if you copulate with someone of a foreign race, you get the disease of becoming that race.
I mean, like the IQ study of like why white women go with black men is that they've got a similar IQ to them. So maybe that is the case of like, you get the wiggeress where she's like, she acts all ghetto and everything, and she does like twerking and she speaks like she's 5. So maybe that is a case that even if the misogyny is like, if a dumb white marries a dumb black, then obviously it's...
I mean, even if it's a casual relationship, it's not permanent. It can be, I don't know, especially if there's no kids. It's just like a...
Well, it's more of a case of like, if your daughter married a black, not even like married, but just even went with him, because I saw this like text somewhere where it was this white dude whose daughter like went to prom with a black kid. And then like he like spagged the fuck out. He was so angry, he just cancelled all of the like firm bill and all these other things and said like, yo, you go with them. And I think that's a bit of an overreaction. I think like your daughter just went to some prom.
Apparently some like alt-right troll account on X claimed that the boyfriend ended up being abusive. I don't know if that's true.
Yeah,
that
I think
would
that's
have been
the same text thread that I saw, but might have been a case of like probably just not doing it type of thing.
And that ever becoming a thing. So I wouldn't be too concerned that that's going to happen, because I know that I've raised my children the right way to not do so. They know my views on it. They know an awful lot of everyone else in my family's views on it. They know that it's not acceptable. They know that that is not the right thing to do. It's not, and I've also warned them of the risks that come with that as well, and that they're very woken up. Obviously, I'm not talking about my youngest 2 children, but this is my eldest, because she's close to 15. The youngest are too young for those conversations at the moment. But the eldest very much understands, no.
Okay, let me just see if I can squeeze a real answer out of you. And to make it easier for you, I'll give you a bit of my past you probably know about. My dad's a rapist. I disowned him. In fact, I got him sent to jail. I was one of his victims. He didn't rape me, but he abused me. I didn't just disown him. I testified against him and I sent him to jail.
Reaper would have said that if you touch a black woman, you turn into an African. And like the normal healthy position is being white, and then like all the other races are diseases.
I sent him to jail.
Crazy.
So I'm familiar with disowning my own if they do something I don't agree with. So if one of your daughters fell in love with a black man and married him, would you disown her, yes or no? Can't be nice. You'd disown your daughter, wouldn't you?
I don't know, to be honest. This is the thing. Like, you could talk about it, but...
This could be your American History X moment.
No, I wouldn't. Because I know that, for one, I would deal with the bloke. It would be gone. It'd be out of the way. It'd be gone. There'd be no black fella around to be the love of their life, because that'd be gone. That'd be dealt with. So there's no vision where I see this ever happening. This is why I can't answer the question. It's like sitting there and going, what would you do if oxygen disappeared tomorrow? But I can't envision that ever happening, so I don't know what I'd do.
Yeah, but hypothetically, if it did happen, but you've already answered it. I'm not going to press you anymore. You have said that you would disown it.
Probably would. If she came home with a black man, I would not be happy about it. But to say overall disown as in never speak to them again in my life, that's a big thing that I probably wouldn't answer on a podcast, no. Like, in terms of a final answer.
Have you seen American History X?
Yeah.
Do you reckon you'll ever have an American History X moment where you think, shit, maybe I got it wrong?
The true ending of that film actually was meant to be where he shaves his head again and he goes for it. That was meant to be the original, but the actor sort of bailed out from it. I know what sacrifices have been made by our people to create England as it is today. And the fact that our people are just letting it go and betraying all of our ancestors just makes me truly sick, because this is not what they fought for. This is not what they visioned as a future of England. Like, this is not the England they visioned. This isn't even England. Like, if you look around and anywhere you go, it's just foreigners everywhere. There's vape shops, there's kebab shops, there's Turkish barbers, there's foreigners selling drugs on the end of the street, there's foreigners raping some kids down the road and stuff. Like, everywhere you go, it's just...
And just to emphasise this point even further, I do think that Britain is, like, not even just, like, demographically, but also to do with, like, anarchist tyranny, where it's, like, oh yeah, like all of
Anarcho-tyranny.
these where UK is becoming very lawless. You know, there's like some little screw who's like nicked or done shoplifting, and the police just don't do anything. And you know, most people in society would let that go. You know, I saw the other like a couple of months ago, like this kid getting battered. Well, there was like these two kids fighting over nothing. They were like from the States. They were like chavs. And you know nothing. Well, there was one woman that did shout at them, but I just feel like there's less law within the UK, and it feels like I think even statistically, there's barely any crimes that are even being reported in the UK, and even then, they're not even being investigated properly. And this is the problem, to the point where you now have to get the police to do their job. You know, I'm reading a book by Rob Warner about law, and you can get the police to do their job. It's just that people just choose not to. And I think that lawlessness it's not even just even the bigger things. It's also the smaller things, like like I said, petty shoplifting. Having a proper system where people have a community where you tell the other shops, like, oh, this person is nicked from this shop. You put you shame them. But I feel like that's lost a bit. Maybe not in my area, but I know there's probably other areas where it's probably even worse than that.
Yeah, okay. To avoid the spur grounds, anarcho-tyranny is when like a lot of crimes are being ignored while kind of these infringements on smaller things and speech rules are enforced like really tough. Like, let's say, like someone steals from a shop, it's like, well, they're disadvantaged. We need to have mercy on them. When someone makes a social media post, they get like SWAT team, they get swatted or something. I've heard in the UK there's like arrests for social media posts.
Yeah,
I need to see what actually these messages were. Like, were they like calling for like some Aryan revolution or something, or were they just like UK's looking far more brown nowadays? Just don't like it. Yeah, I need to see what the social media
basically what he said
were.
was that he posted a picture of, it was in black and white, saying and it said Packy's out or something, and the police were trying to spin it like, oh, he's the one who painted it on the wall, something like that. That's how the police were. He can't talk about the case, but that's why he mentioned why he was arrested.
Not England anymore. And that's because there's too many immigrants. Like, you can beat around the bush, but that's the simple fact.
Well, I'd agree with you there. But there's not just too many immigrants. There's an obscene amount of immigrants, far too many, an astronomical level, totally out of control. And it's fucking embarrassing. I mean, I love the country. I love the people. Same as you. I feel very, very embarrassed of our government being our representatives. I mean, I really do. I mean, I loathe Parliament. The people in there that are so detached from the likes of you and me, I just think, how have we got into this mess? Have you ever been abroad on holiday to a country outside of Europe?
Yeah, I've been to Turkey.
Oh, blimey, but that's almost 100% Muslim.
Hated it.
Did you? What did you dislike about it the most?
The food's crap. The people, they're just like, it's like a whole country of kebab people. Like,
I think just emphasising this, when I've been to Turkey, I don't mind it. In fact, my mum and dad liked it, but I do think that Turkey is not the best place to go, in my opinion. I do think
would probably start. He's the guy who would probably start playing Serbia Strong.
Yeah, but probably, yeah, he'd probably start playing that just to
remove
piss the
kebab.
ex off.
I'm screaming, remove kebab. Serbia
Kebab
remove.
Yeah, something like that.
That's the only way I can explain it. Like, when you go in the kebab shop and like they're like, hey, boss, blah, blah, blah. It's just that everywhere. And it was just like, oh, it's not for me. Didn't like it.
Are you chili sauce or garlic sauce, man?
I don't really eat kebab. I used to when I was younger, when I go to the pubs and that, I used to have chili sauce and that, but no, I wouldn't eat a kebab now.
Then you had your fucking racist epiphany and you thought, right, that's the first food.
That is when I first heard that some little girl got pushed into a kebab and chopped up from all the Pakistani rape gangs. And then after that, I was like, no.
And a lot of people won't be able to argue.
Very important argument, I guess, like the shitlib argument of like, well, but if you don't have diversity, you can't have the food. You can have people of different ethnic groups learn to make different ethnic
I think
foods.
there's a thing I did want to say. Subscribe to people for their foods, not their people, I would say.
Well, yeah, why
like don't just but what about their food and music? I don't give a fuck about the food and music. I can make it here. There's a recipe book, and I can go online and look up music. Not that I would listen to it.
There's a little thing called the internet, and I can listen to Bollywood songs without having like a large Indian population in my country. Or, my family cooks rice. That doesn't mean that we're Chinese or we have some Chinese genes or that the Chinese have a genetic lock or copyright on rice cooking. We, like, white people can make rice too. Black Africans can make rice too. Like, it isn't this like ethnic magic where like only if you're in the ethnic group that invented the food can you cook the food. It's really dumb. It's like this. It's like brain rot argument. It's like a 20 IQ argument.
Disgusting. You don't know what's in that meat. You don't trust the people serving it. Like, it's just no.
Yeah. See, there's things that I can't argue with, even if this was a debate, because the crime against humanity, the crime against children, the crime against our culture, it's off the Richter scale. And I can see why people are leaning more towards your viewpoint, because things are so out of control now. The pendulum's gone so far that way that people are happy to go completely the other way. And there's probably, as Piers Morgan, has someone mainstream ever not said, right, I want to have a head-to-head with you?
No. So I had Louis Theroux team reach out to me back when I used to do the dinghy stuff, but I said no because I've watched loads of like his like documentary things and they're obvious stitch-ups, and I was like only like 2 years into my activism back then. I was like, no, it's just not happening.
Yeah, there was this one that he did about the indigenous people where basically it would take out of context of like the Boers, like the white South Africans. And basically he would try to like grill the one guy saying that, like about, the indigenous people are technically the Africans there, the black Africans. And the white Boers were just like leftovers. And he argued that, his ancestors, he's not entitled to it. He said that those are what his ancestors built on those lands, and he deserves to have them. I think that was
if you want to go by like indigeneity, by like which group was there first, or like which group was conquered first, it would be the Khoisan people, not the current Bantu population. It would be the Khoisan people that were kind of pushed out during the Bantu expansion into like this small redoubt in Western Africa. So the Zulus and the Xhosas wouldn't even like by that logic be the rightful owners, because they conquered it from the Khoisans. So and let me secondly, like the same people pushing that will say that if you have like integrated into Italian culture as an African immigrant, you're Italian. So it's a very selective argument they use. It's like this one-time gotcha. It's not even a principle they have. Even like normie conservatives like Sean from the actual Justice Warrior pointed that out. The Zulu expansion actually started after Europeans settled the Cape in certain areas before the surprising fact.
Which I'm very grateful for. That was the deal. But we'd never edit this to make somebody look worse or better. It's just like, if this is what you're saying, this is your answer, we're not going to doctor it, and I'm also not going to edit. I never do, to make myself look better than what I am. It's like, well, I am who I am. I've got plenty of people that dislike me.
Yeah.
Even your lot don't like me. It's like, fucking hell, can't
Your
win.
lot hate me.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see. I mean, the thing is, I've never really had a massive discussion. And with X, because it's such a toxic platform, but I'm very grateful for it. Because it allows voices like mine. I mean, I was completely and utterly fucking censored just through my views. And I think you called me a liberal. So Elon Musk has now opened up that door for people to speak freely. And I think, well, you should be able to listen to people's views, because you'll never know what they're capable of if you don't know what they're saying or thinking. I think the shutdown of free speech is one of the most dangerous things you could possibly do to a nation. I mean, you look at Anjem Choudhury. Imagine if he'd have been completely he shouldn't have been allowed to fucking hate preach on our streets. I mean, Jesus Christ, what the fucking hell was the country thinking then? But I'd still like to have seen him have an X platform so people could see just how radical this piece of shit is and get him banged up sooner than he was. I mean, Christ, imagine how many people he's responsible for converting and radicalising. Now, obviously, people can find you on X, which I'd imagine is the only platform you're going to be allowed on. Is there anybody out there that you'd like to debate?
Well, I want to debate Tommy Robinson. I'm probably arguably one of the largest ethno-nationalist accounts in the UK. He's arguably the biggest civic nationalist in the UK, if not the world. He's very confident on his position. which I believe, I know he's your friend, so I'm going to go easy on what I say. So
This we agreed on also.
Yeah,
'Cause I'd never have a friend of mine bad-mouthed in front of me.
yeah, no, I understand that exactly. But to answer your question, yeah, I very much like to debate Tommy. I think he's leading our people down the garden path to nowhere. I think he knows this as well. I think he may have started with the best intentions, but I believe civic nationalism will lead to our people being replaced, and it needs to be addressed. That's all I'll say on it.
Yeah. The thing is, mate, like you've said some fucking wild things, but you're not an unlikable bloke.
So I'm not horrible. I'm just telling you what I think.
And you've explained the reason why you feel the way you feel, and I suppose there's no flexibility with you. You've seen rapes and murders and crimes and scary stuff coming from foreign people, so in your head it's a lot easier just to expel them all.
It's not just the rapes and murders. It's the future of our people. This is the priority. It's our people are going to become a minority in our own homelands. And to understand what that means is we're going to have no control over our destiny. That means we're not even voting our way out of any of the problems. We're not even going to be able to have the strength if there was a civil war to be able to get ourselves out of these problems, because we will be a minority. Sure, we may be the largest minority for a small amount of time, but all of these other small ethnic groups, they're not going to ally with us if things go tits up. They're going to ally with the other foreigners. Like all the Africans are going to stick together with other Africans, and the Asians are going to stick with other
sometimes
Asians
would.
and so forth. Like the Bangladesh.
Yeah, no, especially if they're uptight and in their own communities, definitely. Like they'll just
Because like East Asians, they're actually pretty big fans of European architecture and culture. Even in here, like Eastern Europe, when I went on a tour of like the old palaces of the Russian nobility, like a lot of like Chinese and Japanese and Korean people were like taking pictures, observing everything. And like anime, they make the characters' eyes big and they kind of depict them as whitish. They don't depict them as like, stereotypical or like statistically most common Asian facial features. They kind of Europeanize them. So they have a fascination with Europe and stuff. I think a lot of them would side with Europeans over Africans.
Deshis and the Pakistanis.
Like a lot of them actually in the United States,
so
they ask white nationalists, "Hey, can I say, please? I'm an Asian that respects white culture." They actually do that.
very interesting. So maybe not like a complete.
In regards to civnats, do you hate them because they don't follow your script?
No, see, I don't hate the civnats. I do very much dislike some of the leading civic nationalists who understand what's at stake and they still push it. I do very much dislike those people. Hate's a strong word. So I don't use it too often. But I would very much say a lot of them are misguided. A lot of civic nationalists are either scared of being called racist. They're scared to say what they truly think in case they get their jobs, in case they lose their jobs. So the civic nationalist position is the safe position. Oh, I want the immigrants gone, but only the illegals and the criminals. And inside, I really want them all gone, but I'm not going to say it because I'm scared. Or for whatever reason, there are people who are generally civic nationalists and love it, and that's mostly because they've got skin in the game. Their best friends are Jamaican, or they've got a mixed race nephew or something. So there'll be people with skin in the game. You can never win those people over. I'll never be able to win those people over. They will always see me as the enemy. But the people in between who are just misguided, that's the audience that I need to bring over to our position from my perspective.
Going to take for you to realise that mass immigration of illegal men is a bad idea. And I went through scenarios and I cut to the chase and said, what about if your daughter was to get raped by one of those men in that army barracks? Because they're housing them in army barracks in Crowborough. Well, I wouldn't politicise it. I said, it sounds like you're making excuses. I said, okay, your daughter's been raped in front of you. You've seen it with your own eyes. Would that change your stance? He wouldn't budge.
Yeah, if you want to emphasise what you just said.
They would say it's just a bad apple, and they would demand like, well, I don't think they would demand the stats, and then they would say that's a bad apple, and then like Ryan Falk would have to pull up with like statistics.
Yeah,
that's how it usually goes with like Civnat. Because like obviously, let's say say yes, 60% of the knife crime in the UK is like by white people. Does that mean that like white people are like an inherently evil and violent race? Like no. Needs to actually, calculate the per capita.
Yeah, it's more to do with the case of, if let me intrude you. It's more of a case of...
Would a personal example make you more skeptical towards, let's say, multiracialism? Let's say, if a black man did something to you or your daughter.
Yeah, like, it's more of a case of crime, how it should be treated is as a crime. And obviously, there is to do with racial crimes, but obviously if I just let things slide just because I'm white, it's kind of just stupid. And I think that'd just be, no, I don't think it's an excuse for lawlessness. Not like they're implying that, but I do think that, there should be a way to make sure that, Britain isn't as lawless, even if it is racially, I think as well.
Well, I can't even say what I'd like to do to him. So I get how politics can swing very much into like, this is actually personal because you're just not getting it. So I'm just curious as to where I am on your spectrum of, yeah, it's political, or I could see this getting personal, but I'm not going to start attacking you online after you've been honest enough and good enough, in my opinion, to come on knowing that I'm going to ask you questions that you're going to have to give honest answers to that are going to be very unpopular with a lot of people. So for me, I think, okay, well, I'm not going to take a personal approach. I am going to keep it as political, and, good luck to you. And I hope that you don't get harmed for your views.
Yeah, like, see, this is the thing. If you're coming at me from a political angle and you're critiquing me, I do not care. If you're attacking me personally, I'm just not even going to respond. I'm not even going to acknowledge it.
I'm like that.
Yeah, it's just like, mate, I get this all day long. I don't need it. Like,
what did I throw at you? I get bald, angry, Phil Mitchell. Oh, that one again.
You're a
I get
idiot.
like, there'll be like
on an
videos of me
argument.
talking that
Can't
just like a
respond to that.
screenshot of the worst sort of angle you can possibly get.
Most unflattering
Is this you,
responded.
Stephen?
Certain like sentences like you're an idiot, or you're a dumbass, or you're a bad person. Where is the substance to even respond to? It's just like a dogmatic value statement. I think with like Jeff Perry yelling the N-word, there's no argument in there.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, so we all get
can
stuff
cut off
like
the
that. It doesn't bother me. But realistically, come at me with in terms of political questions and anything you want. I'm not going to hold it against you. Obviously, if you was coming at me with like ulterior motives and stuff like that, then maybe I'd be a bit pissed off. But overall, I'll talk to anyone.
I purely wanted to know how you've come to where you are. What's moulded the man. Who is Steve? Final question: who is Steve Laws?
Father, patriot, self-employed painter, keep myself to myself. If I had my way, I'd be at home just watching the football, enjoy it and playing my video games, just chilling out with the kids. Like, that would be me. I didn't want to do this. I was forced to do this. I had no choice.
But I was under the impression that the people that are coming up through universities and schools, because I know they're indoctrination camps, I thought they was more steering towards the left. But I've been corrected by several people that have got their eye a lot closer on the ball than me, that the younger generations coming up, they're far more right.
So more radical than I am, mate.
Yeah, maybe it is a generational thing. And for me, as I've grown up, I thought, well, my job now is to sit back, listen, learn.
Right, so we'll give the final commentary and conclusion to this interview. Fjodor, what did you think about Steve Law's views? Do you think they were too Wignatty? Do you think that some of the points that he made were good? And also to do with the Civnat Liam Tuff, if I can remember his name. What do you think? Because I think that Steve made a lot of good points, as he usually does, but there's a lot very strongly, and especially what he's done like he did in April this year, I do think I disagree with a lot.
It is definitely much better than like a Jeff Berry or like Charlottesville level stuff where they just yell racial slurs. And I would say that he like very, very strongly like repudiates sort of extreme stuff where like, you need to gas people, He just outright said, no, it's not necessary. And when he was asked about, let's say, like racial hierarchies, what like a hardcore would have to do is like Spencer is like, yeah, we are superior, we're the best, we created the modern world, white people are the best, and that's of course like a really, really bad optics move, and yeah, it's a very stereotypical thing. I'm glad he didn't take that sort of route. With like the Hitler regime, I would be much more careful. I would say the bad things out first, and especially kind of, show that I have knowledge of all their like dumb elements that they had in there. because that's a very taboo subject. That's basically the archetypal evil of the post-war consensus. But yeah, he was much more reasonable than I expected on a lot of topics. With like the purism, like I would have your black mom deported, and like even if the doctor saved your life, I would have them deported. That's a really hard sell for the electorate. That's a pretty purist position. I have more of a blithering genius position where I believe that yes, you should preserve an ethnic majority of the people, of the ethnogenesis of the land. But I'm not like purist that like if you're like a black man who has like earned the Victoria Cross and done some like really heroic service for the UK, I would not kick you out. With his opponent is like an archetypal normie in a sense that he doesn't think in terms of statistics. He's like, yeah, I know a black bloke named Footlong who has a BBC, yeah, and my son's friend is on him. And like if I was a normie, I'd talk the same way because again, yeah, my experience with Africans and people of African ethnogenesis is filtered. If he thought statistically, he could be convinced with crime stats maybe and like IQ stats. Easily,
Yeah,
but
it's
yes,
usually with
correct
these
that it's
civic
hard to
types is they don't understand, like, genetically they're very different from us. It's more of like an
well,
experience thing.
well, these kinds of normies, if hypothetically this man had like really bad experience with Africans, let's say like a Afro drug dealer beat him up and like got his daughter hooked on something, then he would be like a Jeff Berry type, like, we hate N-words, we hate S-words. So like they don't think statistically. And yes, Steve Law's absolutely correctly diagnosed that because he has had like really positive experiences personally with Africans, his like son's friends are Africans, whatever. It would be like really hard, almost impossible to convince him. Maybe if maybe if he had like a bunch of bad experiences with them, maybe then he would.
Well,
kind
I
of
personally,
shift
like
towards
I've
Muslim.
said, I haven't had that much of a negative experience. As I said, I've had like minority friends, so to speak. That one kid I was really good friends with in primary school, but I do think again the Sibnat types usually tends to go off their experiences, but obviously to do with the whole the purism take is that like that it needs to be like the whole thing where Steve was going on mass deportations and deporting people even if they haven't done something wrong, that I would disagree with, and obviously it would be a hard sell to the electorate, as you said.
Obviously, like any of our ideas are really hard sell for the mainstream because we don't have the money, we don't have like the corporate lobby groups behind us. But you need to kind of choose how to market it because the position's already tough. So if you go too purist, it just becomes like
like the question of the race mixing thing as well. I do think like the whole Black Daughter stuff. He wasn't complete absolutist, but I do think that purist angle too hard to sell, and as well personally it can be quite impactful, if you disown your child just because of being
to his credit,
race.
I would say to his credit, he didn't go like, if my daughter ever kissed a black man, I would immediately take my belt and beat the crap out of her. Like that would have been like a Wignat answer. So he kind of divulged from like the Wignat dialogue tree there as well.
But yeah, some of the things he did were kind of Wignatty, but I do think that even though, like, obviously, I'm a bit salty about what happened with Herman and Steve. I do think that I think it's better because it kind of reminds me of like the Civ Nat and Ethnic Nash. It's kind of like what happened with Pete North, where he left the policy team because he wanted it done a certain way. And it comes off more neoconservative type, and obviously to do with the ethnic conservative type, ethnic nationalist type, where basically, like they've kind of gone the separate ways and they've left Herman, which is fine because obviously I think they were better on their own. I do think that if they are like a citizen journalist, as Steve calls himself and as Pete North calls himself, I do think it's better that people do stick in their own lanes, even if they're a neocon, because I don't think they would work well with like an ethnic nationalist. Because I did speak to Pete North through DMs, and yeah, he thought that like his views didn't align with Man's. But yeah, I understand that if these people stick in their own saying it's better. But again, I do think that, despite the saltiness that I have for them, I do think that Steve Laws is obviously just a bloke who will obviously die on the hill that he was. Obviously, you can't convince him on everything, but I do think that Steve Laws overall has been quite, I guess, big in these spaces. But
The thing is that his interview is way too, like, it was still like way too reasonable to be a lol cow. We should like react to Jeff Barry live, or like we should react to like Richard Spencer's drunk screech interview
that'll
for
be
like
quite
the maximum lulls,
Right,
where he
anyway,
like he's like red in the face and like saying I'm the best.
in conclusion, obviously, this interview is very interesting, both on what Lane Tuff said and also what Steve Laws said. So, yeah, anyway, thank you for watching the video. If you want to chime in something at the end before I end the...
Yeah, so in conclusion, Steve is not a complete, Ku Klux Wignat, but he has some extreme positions, but still he has some skills in optical marketing and selling his position. But still, it's hard to see him getting elected into mainstream politics with such like jurist positions that he has. And the interviewer is kind of a normie. He bases his views based on personal experiences, but he is open-minded, so he's not an NPC type, as we would say in Portugal.